Heaven Official's Blessing. Tian Guan Ci Fu by Mo Xiang Tong Xiu. Read by Plant Bones. Chapter 23. In the cannibal's lair, Ghost King faces heavenly officials. Xielian turned his head to look at that dejected-looking kneeling statue. Qirong was right about one thing. I am quite the failure. Don't believe the words of useless trash like him, Hua Tung said quietly. Other than being good at not dying and running away, he's got nothing going for him. He couldn't even level up to a supreme after 800 years. Even beating him up would only dirty your hands. Celian's lips jerked upward at the thought. Wasn't he the same? Only good at not dying and running away, even after 800 years. He'd only gotten this far, which was nowhere. When he first saw Lan Tinqiu as the martial god of the East, a high-ranking heavenly official but still maintaining his old character, still straightforward, still falling asleep in boring meetings, he felt gratified. However, who knew how he would change from now on? He went off in pursuit of Qirong. Once that was done, how would he end things with Xielian? Xielian rose to his feet slowly and walked to the statue. He faced it head-on. That face was indeed exactly the same as his own, only it was carved with a sorrowful expression, its face covered in tears, contorted and scrunched up, extremely ugly. After staring at it for a moment, Celian sighed and placed his hand on his head, pouring in a powerful pulse of energy. When he removed his hand, 2 long crevices crawled over the cheeks of the statue, and soon after, the crying face broke apart. The statue collapsed and crumbled into innumerable small rocks that fell to the ground, never to be restored. When Xielian turned around again, his usual gentle, serene expression had returned. He rubbed his forehead and said, There are probably still humans hidden in Qirong's lair. Let's go find them and release them. Hua Tung stood up too. Let's go. During the ruckus earlier, all the little green lantern ghosts in Qirong's lair had fled, and those who hadn't were hidden in the shadows, afraid to come out. The two searched all over, nabbing a couple of unfortunate little ghosts along the way and forcing them to guide them to the many caves used for storing fresh food. Counting roughly, the number of people Qirong had captured for consumption was shockingly no less than 300, all villagers living near or travelers passing by. The two unlocked jail cells as they roamed, freeing all the detainees. With the task at hand, Xielian was able to focus on something else and calm down. And once they were free, he had time to chat with Hua Tung. He pondered his words, but asked anyway. By the way, Sanlam, I wanted to ask you about something. What is it? Hua Tung replied. How did you know that Qirong was the mastermind behind the Gilded Banquet plot? Xielian asked. At first he didn't know why Hua Tung had brought him and Lang Tianqiu to the Green Ghost Lair, but now he understood Hua Tung's objective was to have Lang Tianqiu hear Qirong's confession to the whole Gilded Banquet scheme for himself. Qirong didn't know that I was Fang Xin, Xielian said. If he had known, he would have harassed me from the start. At the time, I thought I knew the old Qianle royals were plotting something underhanded. I didn't know that Qirong was behind it all. So how did you find out? How long have you known this? Not too long. Hua Tung walked alongside him with his hands clasped behind his back. I've run into Qirong a few times and quickly understood what sort of person he is. Qirong was of Xianle when he was alive and holds deep hatred for Yong'an. He's good at the art of provocation, fanning fires and fabricating situations. Many major assassination plots targeting Yong'an nobles were manipulated by him behind the scenes. But he did hide himself well. Xielian shook his head. So he already had a history. Good thing he's good at hiding. If the upper court found out he had a hand in all those mortal conflicts, they wouldn't show him any mercy. The Gilded Banquet Massacre was very much his style, Hua Chong said. So I had always believed that he was the mastermind, and the state preceptor Fang Xin was his lackey. But in the upper court, when Lang Tianqiu identified you as the state preceptor Fang Xin, it was clear there was no way Fang Xin and Qirong could be on the same side. Xialian's steps slowed. It seemed that even though Huatang wasn't present in the heavens, he was still very well informed on what went on in the Palace of Divine Might. And not just that, he was also very knowledgeable about Xialian's personal relationship with Qirong. Huatang continued. Nevertheless, I still lean toward Qirong as the mastermind, or at least the one who started the whole thing. Ordinary Shenle descendants received tremendous improvements to their lives after Lang Tianqiu's father ascended the throne, and they no longer thought of avenging their fallen kingdom like they had in the past. The only ones who couldn't let go would be the royal family of Xianle. At the time, the sole remaining descendant was Prince Enle. If Qirong wanted to instigate anyone into starting anything, it would have been him. And very conveniently, the man in question randomly died of an unknown illness right after the Gilded Banquet. Obviously suspect, is it not? Xielian nodded, and Huatong concluded. So he was most likely killed, and the reason for his death had something to do with the Gilded Banquet. My initial deduction was that it was the work of Yong'an nobility, but nothing happened to the descendants of Xianle, so it couldn't have been them. I thought about it and came to my present conclusion. Xialin smiled and was amazed. So few clues, yet you deduced it so accurately. It's not hard, Hotchung said. You just have to know the main people involved well. That's for sure. But in your deduction, there's a significant assumption that I don't understand. And that is? Huatong asked. Why were you so convinced that Tirong was the one who made the first move? It's not that I believed he did it. It's just that I believed you didn't. Xialian's smile faded at this. He was quiet for a moment before asking, Why is that? If you had admitted to the Gilded Banquet massacre using any other reason, then I would have believed you, Huatang replied. The Yong'an king was a diligent ruler, loved by the people, and yet Lang Tianqiu said the reason you told him was, I couldn't stand seeing your people upon the throne. That was a model declaration for someone intent on overthrowing the crown, but if that declaration came from you, it'd be a poor attempt at tarnishing your name. Xielian puffed a soundless laugh at the mention. Tarnishing my name. You didn't think that I might have harbored those thoughts deep inside? Maybe I do have some resentment hidden. Thoughts are thoughts. You wouldn't have acted on them, Huatong said. Xielian shut his mouth. After a moment, he said, Sanlang, I'm not the person you think I am. You... Xielian closed his eyes and shook his head, as if unsure whether to continue. Huatong urged, Tell me. It's fine. Xielian chewed on his words, but finally said, I think it's best for people not to place too much hope on someone else. Oh? Huatong hummed. And what do you mean by that? You shouldn't idolize people or think of them as overly perfect, Xialian replied. If you're just watching a shadow from afar and never interacting, then sure. But once acquainted and grown close, you'll one day find that this person isn't what you imagined. Maybe even the complete opposite. When that happens, you'll be very disappointed. Huacheng disagreed respectfully. You never know. I don't care if anyone else is disappointed, but to some, the very existence of a certain person in this world is, in itself, hope. although he didn't specify who some were or who a certain person was. And though his tone was plain and casual, like he was making an offhand comment, Xie heart suddenly lifted, and he felt light. He paused in his step, and couldn't speak for a long time. A moment later, he suddenly asked, Sanlang, who are you really? Huatong stopped too, and he turned his head to look at him. Xie looked him squarely in his eye and asked seriously, You knew who Tirong was, and his background. You knew who I was, and how to paint the god-pleasing crown prince. You seem to know everything about me. You know a lot, maybe even more than you let on. Huatong arched his brow. Don't I always know a lot? Xie shook his head. It's not the same. His left hand held his right elbow, while his right hand propped up his chin. He looked at Huatong in wonder. I've always had the feeling you're someone from my past, and that you must have known me from very early on. Maybe it was during my first ascension? No, maybe even earlier. Yet, I really don't remember. When have I ever met a character like you? Someone like Huatong would be unforgettable from the first meeting. Xie had never bashed his head in and lost his memories, so if they had met, there was no reason he wouldn't remember. Xie gazed at him, fixed and somewhat bemused. Who are you exactly? Have I met you before? Huatong didn't answer, but his lips lifted softly. Xie immediately returned to his senses and realized that his questions were extremely inappropriate. A ghost's real name was usually a secret. Not counting unfathomably abnormal cases like Tirong, a ghost usually wouldn't tell it to anyone. Xie hurriedly said, I'm sorry. Don't mind me. I was just asking. You don't have to answer me. Who you are, it doesn't matter. Just then, Huatong's eye squinted. Xie sensed something as well and looked back. From nearby in the caves behind them came the sound of noisy chatter and the clear, loud voice of a woman. I told you my powers were stronger in my female form, and even my luck is better, yet you still wouldn't let me. See now? We rolled it right this time. It was Shiting Xuan's voice. Xie blurted out, Lord Windmaster. As he had guessed, the white-clad lady cultivator came sprinting out of a cave opening, and her eyes lit up when she saw Xie. I found him! His Highness is here! However, she then saw Huatong standing behind Xie, and her face fell immediately. She leapt backward and flashed the Windmaster fan before her. Before Xie had the chance to say anything, a man's voice echoed from within the cave. Did you find him? Is everything all right? The voice approached quickly, and soon another figure appeared. It was Feng Xin. He had a long black bow in his left hand, and the moment he saw Huatong, he pulled back the silver bowstring on high alert. Huatong sneered and made no comment. Xie hurriedly said, Put away your weapons. We can talk this out. The four had run into each other on the narrow path of the Green Ghost lair, 2 against 2. Feng Xin had his bowstring fully taut. A strand of spiritual light formed into the shape of an arrow within his right hand, and he aimed it at Huatong. Feng Xin spoke first, his voice full of warning. Your Highness, come here. Feng Xin's bow was gifted to him by Zhenwu, named Feng Xin. It was a rather troublesome spiritual device to face off against. Xie was afraid he'd shoot for real, and he rushed to stand in front of Huatong, shielding him. But unexpectedly, Huatong grabbed him from behind and pulled him right back. That pull startled the other two. Shiting Xuan immediately raised his hand. Huatong, Crimson Rain Sunflower, don't do anything rash. The burning of your Paradise Manor was an accident. If you're upset, we can talk. The heavens can pay you back. Heavenly Emperor isn't that short on cash. Let go of his highness and we can talk. Xie didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but he was still immensely grateful. Lord Windmaster, you're mistaken. Actually, He wanted to explain that Hua Chang hadn't come looking for payback because of Paradise Manor, but Shi Xuan was throwing him gullyful looks as if telling him not to speak a word. Hua Chang didn't argue either, just raised his voice to speak. And what about Junwu setting up a spy under my nose? We have nothing to talk about. Xiaolian finally understood. Shi Xuan could see that Hua Chang had no ill intent, but on the surface they had to pretend that Hua Chang had only barged into the heavens to collect his due. It would prevent gossip from those who might suggest that Xiaolian had maliciously and intentionally absconded. Hua Chang understood Shi Xuan's intent and played along. However, Xiaolian did not want to go this route. All right, stop acting. He only came to the heavens to save me. Sunlong had good intentions, so why conceal them? No more acting, Shi Xuan agreed. I already sent those two exchanges to the communication array. You don't understand. No matter how good the intentions, words always end up negative once they've been passed around enough. They might as well be negative from the start. You get it, Hua Chang commented. Of course. Otherwise, how could I, Lord Windmaster, be so popular in the heavens? Shi Xuan prayed. General Nanyang, lower your bow. However, Feng Xin still had his bow pulled at almost full strength, holding his breath and not saying a word. Shi Xuan smacked him. Put it down! Can't you see that they're close? Nothing bad is gonna happen. Feng Xin said in a dark voice, Your Highness, the one next to you is a supreme. Seeing that he wouldn't drop his hostility, nor his bow, Shi Xuan suddenly threw herself into his arms. Instantly, Feng Xin's face paled worse than if he'd seen a ghost by a millionfold. He screamed, and the shaft of the spiritual arrow dissipated powerlessly like a cloud. Face aghast, he opened his mouth, and a long string of loud curses came out, ending with a distressed cry. What the fuck? What are you doing? Turned out, Shi Xuan had used her bosoms to ram into the arm holding the arrow. By the looks of it, the blow had thoroughly terrified Feng Xin. Shi Xuan swung her wrist back, elegantly carefree, looking as though she hadn't done anything indecent. I haven't even asked you what you are doing. I just said that Crimson Rainsat Flower came to save His Highness, and you still pointed him with your arrow. If you want to fight so badly, I won't help you. Feng Xin had already backed a million miles away and looked like he would never approach her again. He cried out in dismay. Don't you dare do that again! Do you hear me? Watching him avoid her as if she were a snake, Shi Xuan, who was so confident about her ethereal beauty, actually felt rather depressed. Okay, I won't do it again. It's not like you suffered any losses, so what's with that reaction? As if feeling she'd lost face, Shi Xuan changed back into a man and turned round. Where's Chen Qiu? At his words, Feng Xin finally he collected himself somewhat and looked around too. Xiaolian eyed and asked, He's not in the communication array? No, Shi Xuan answered. After he rolled the dice and left, we didn't hear a peep. Asked him multiple times what the correct roll was, but he never replied. Before, when I talked to Tincio, he'd always respond really fast. Not just to me, but any officials, regardless of their rank. So weird. Xiaolian let out a soft sigh. His Highness Taihua has left to chase after Qirong. The other two were taken aback. Qirong? Yeah, this place is Qirong's lair. Xiaolian sighed. In any case... Feng Xin cut in. Wait, why is His Highness Taihua pursuing Qirong? Didn't he come chasing after you? No reason, Hua Chang answered from behind. He's simply chasing the true culprit behind the Gilded Banquet massacre. The only thing His Highness did was clean up the mess that murderer left. Lang Tincho found out the truth and went chasing after the real culprit. That's all. Feng Xin was shocked. The real culprit? Is this true? Xiaolian didn't think he could explain it all again, and he certainly couldn't explain the complex details clearly in a rushed way, so he just shook his head. It's not that simple. I'll explain more when we get back. Shi Xuan, although ignorant of the full story, was joyous. I knew there was a misunderstanding in all this. I've got such godly premonition. Now, even if you return, you won't be detained. Good, Feng Xin said too, looking greatly relieved. He put away his bow, and the wariness he had shown also significantly decreased. Hua Tong, on the other hand, only snorted coldly. Did you know, Xie asked Feng Xin, that Qirong is... that Qirong? Feng Xin asked, which Qirong? Who? Then he gave a startle. The one we knew? So you didn't realize it was him either, Xie remarked. Feng Xin's face went dark. No, I've never run into the Green Ghost himself, and always assumed the name was just a coincidence. What kind of dumbass would run around flaunting his real name? That's crazy! But the moment the words left his mouth, he instantly remembered that Qirong was indeed crazy. His eyes met Xielian's, and both fell silent in mutual understanding. Since long before the two ascended, Feng Xin had despised Qirong. Qirong was the son of the younger sister of Xielian's mother, the last queen of Xianle. He grew up in the royal palace and spent his days clinging to Xielian, and as Xielian's personal guard, Feng Xin of course saw Qirong frequently. Qirong was young, immature, bullheaded, energetic, extreme, and worst of all, royalty. Thus no one dared educate or discipline him, and it was easy to imagine how lawless he became. The words that always used to hang upon his lips were, "My cousin, the crown prince, is perfect! My cousin, something, something!" If anyone was even remotely disrespectful to Xialian, or gave him a sliver of a problem, it didn't matter who it was. Qirong would surely bag that person with a sack and beat them until they shat themselves. In his mind, it was never a care or respect for the old or young. There was even an incident where Xialian saved a child not even 10 years of age from Qirong's clutches. The poor boy had been beaten to a bloody pulp, miserable to the bone. Yet Xielian was sympathetic to Qirong's circumstances. Plus, he was genuinely on Xielian's side, so even Xielian never disciplined him physically. But if it was only lectures awaiting him, Qirong wouldn't change no matter how many times he was scolded. He was truly a headache. Feng Xin was a much more straightforward person, abrasive in his speech and not as patient as Xielian. Thus, he was constantly in dispute with Qirong or disobeying his commands. Because of that, Qirong also despised him and would come up with new ways to get him in trouble, such as ordering him to run unreasonable errands. After Xielian ascended, Qirong became even more preposterous. For example, if anyone spat before the palace of the crown prince, he would try to force burning hot coal down their throat. Feng Xin had to descend frequently to clean up after him and prevent him from going too far. Truly aggravating. He'd always tell Xialian, "Qirong is ill in the head, and he's gonna incite chaos one day." If that's really him, then it's no surprise that he did it, Feng Xin said. Shi Qingxuan was curious. What? Do you all know the Green Ghost? Xialian nodded. He's my little cousin. Shi Qingxuan was shocked and crossed his arms. Well, ain't that something else? He is definitely something else, Xialian agreed. I'm not talking about him, Shi Qingxuan said. I'm talking about you. Your Highness, look at you. Martial gods of the southeast and southwest are both your old buddies. Martial god of the east is your disciple. That night-torn green lantern is your cousin. Crimson rain-sought flower is your sworn brother. And I, Lord Windmaster, am your best friend. Ain't that something? Xialian smiled, thinking that the Lord Windmaster certainly had a breezy character befitting his title. The moment the wind blew, all the gloomy clouds dispersed. Yet when Huatong and Feng Xin heard Crimson Rain-sought flower is your sworn brother, both looked like they disagreed. Huatong raised his brows, and Feng Xin knitted his. After a moment, Feng Xin turned to Xialian. If there's nothing else, you better hurry back to the Heavenly Court. Many of the heavenly officials have no idea what just happened in that ruckus, and they're still waiting for news above. Junwu should have been informed by now. You need to report back and give him the proper account. Huatong laughed out loud at his words. And what are you laughing at? Feng Xin demanded. And here I was, marveling at how straightforward you are. But it turns out you like to beat around the bush, too, Hua Chang said. You just don't want His Highness to associate with the likes of demons and ghosts like me. So why not say it openly? Think it's not your place? Xialian cleared his throat softly. Sanlan, as long as you're aware that he shouldn't be associating with the likes of demons and ghosts, Feng Xin said coldly. Ha Chang made no indication he agreed or disagreed with this sentiment, and Xialian intercepted, responding to Feng Xin quietly. I will report in and give you a proper account, but right now there are more important things at hand. Qirong had over 300 humans hidden in his lair to feed upon. Thanks to Sanlang's help, they were all saved. There are certainly a number of little ghosts that still need to be taken care of. I will return to the heavens as soon as that's done. It won't be good to take too long. Let me deal with this, Feng Xin said. Hua Chang nodded. Judging by heaven's standards of efficiently, you'll probably finish handling it by next month. You say that as if it can be handled in an instant, Feng Xin said. The two clashed measure for measure. Shi Qingxuan used his eyes to ask Xialian, did something happen between the two of them? But Xialian only shook his head. He was about to change the subject when Hua Tong took out an umbrella from who knows where. The umbrella was crimson red like maple leaves, vivid like fire. Hua Tong raised it with one hand and covered himself and Xialian, reflecting a blushing red on their cheeks. This had to be the same umbrella that Hua Tong used to shield them through the hanging corpse forest at Mount Yujun. However, it wasn't raining at the moment, so Xialian was curious. Sanlang, why did you open an umbrella? Hua Tong looked at him and shifted the umbrella more to Xialian's side, smiling cheerfully. Just wait. The sky's about to change. As he spoke, it poured from the sky. Rain thundered down, flecking and flacking. It came so suddenly, Xialian was dumbfounded. However, he was properly covered under Hua Tong's umbrella. Not a single drop hit him. Feng Xin was standing on the other side of the cave, however, and had not prepared at all. He was drenched head to toe by this rain, and the worst thing was the rain was the color of blood. Looking over, Feng Xin was now covered in blood and dripping. Only his wide, bulging eyes were white, the rest of him red. Shi Qingxuan was conveniently standing in the interior of another cave, so he wasn't affected, but his eyes were also wide with shock. He even forgot to wave his whisk. That pouring rain came suddenly, and it left equally suddenly, and soon enough, everything was quiet once more. It took Feng Xin some time to recover. He wiped at his face, but it was still smeared with red, his attempt useless. What? Xialian's mouth was agape. Hua Chang closed the umbrella and left. An instant. How's that? In the span of those 4 short words, he'd already taken a number of leisurely steps and was quite a distance away. Xialian was fumbling through his sleeves, looking for some rags, but instead Shi Qingxuan plucked some white strands from his whisks and handed them to the deeply silent Feng Xin. The moment Hua Tong left, Xialian immediately sensed a void behind him and turned around in a rush, running a few steps after him. Sanlang, are you going back to Ghost City? Hua Tong turned his head. Aren't you going back to the Heavenly Court? He then added, half-jokingly. But if you want to follow him back to Ghost City, you're very welcome to. Xialian chuckled. Next time, he said sincerely. Next time, if there's a chance, I'll definitely visit Ghost City again. I'll help you lay bricks when you rebuild Paradise Manor. No need to lay bricks. Just sitting there and watching would be fine, Hua Chang replied. Xialian's smile died a little. This thing with Jinzhou, despite how it went down, I should still thank you. He paused, then continued. I don't know what the right thing to do was, so maybe this wasn't such a bad outcome. You think too much, Hua Tong said lightly. Xialian was slightly taken aback and tilted his head. Just focus on doing what you want to do, Hua Tong said. After that, he turned around and waved his hand. Soon after, from within the mountains and under the moonlight, That crimson silhouette slowly disappeared from Xiao Lian's sight.